Hello, my name's Sarah Byrne and I'm the brand manager of Source Living. And I'd like to thank you for joining me on this webinar today, where I'm going to walk you through what we need to do as letting agents and landlords to prepare for the Renters' Rights Bill. This is certainly a very hot topic in the press and on social media. And what is my aim today is to debunk it all and just give you a high level overview of what it's all about and why I think this is a really positive step for everybody, from tenants and landlords alike, and for agents as well. Okay, so what is the Renters' Rights Bill? Well, it's the most significant change to the private rental sector to happen since the Housing Act of 1988 was first introduced. The bill is going to give tenants more security, and for landlords, there's going to be a more streamlined system for regaining possession of properties. So that means there'll be clearer grounds for eviction, and there'll also be a new property portal to help landlords understand their obligations and demonstrate compliance. I think notably the most thing or the hot topic that's being talked about at the moment is the ending of the Section 21 evictions, which I'm going to come on to a little bit later in the presentation. So why now? Well, what the government are looking to do is really just give tenants a bit more security in relation to tenure of the property and also the conditions of the property as well, because they feel that there's a bit of a lack of fairness to both tenants and landlords in this respect at the moment. So it's really about just setting some really clear rules so that landlords know what their responsibilities are and tenants have, as I say, that security of tenure as well. So it's designed really to end poor practices and ensure tenant protection. So when's this going to happen? Well, at the moment, this is in report stage with the Houses of Parliament, and it is possible that this could pass royal assent on July the 22nd. Irrespective of whether this happens before Parliament rises for summer at the end of the month, it's expected to happen late into 2025 and early 2026. And the thing is that we all need to be aware of is that the changes will apply to both new and existing tenancies on the date the legislation comes into effect. So we really do need to be talking about this now and getting out ahead of it, because this is coming and we need to be doing everything we can, both as agents, land and landlords alike, to be ready for this later in the year and into early next year. Okay, so what are those changes? Well, what I've done on the coming slides, I've done the key changes. It's an overview of everything that we can expect when this new law comes in. So I've broken it down really nicely on the coming slides. So grab a pen, you can make some notes, and let's delve straight in now. Okay, so under the Renters' Rights Bill, assured tenancies, or ASTs, will be abolished and all tenancies will become rolling or periodic tenancies. This means that landlords will no longer be able to rely on Section 21 no fault evictions to regain possession of their properties. Instead, they'll need to use Section 8 grounds for possession, meaning they will need a valid legal reason to evict a tenant. These grounds include, but are not limited to, rent arrears, antisocial behaviour, and a genuine need for the landlord or their family to occupy the property. Section 8 will likely be updated to include a wider range of grounds for eviction, providing landlords with more options when needing to regain possession. So landlords will need to read up on this because they need to understand and adhere to these new regulations, as they will be the primary mechanism for ending tenancies. So what will periodic tenancies look like? Essentially, it's more flexibility for tenants and more responsibility for landlords. Landlords really do need to prepare for tenants potentially occupying their properties for longer. So where a landlord may have offered a short-term let previously, this will no longer be an option for them. Okay, so there's going to be a slight change here regarding property standards. So the decent home standards will be extended to the private rental sector. Now, currently, this applies to social housing, but it is being extended to the private rental sector, really just to make sure that properties do meet the minimum quality standards. Now, this also means that local councils will have extensive powers to gather evidence about any suspected breaches of many different pieces of housing law. So perhaps where mold or damp isn't being addressed quickly, they have the powers to step in and enforce the rules about that. Equally, they can also step in where there's been improper notices for possession, breaches of the database and ombudsman rules, and illegal eviction. So what this is going to do is essentially this is going to see any landlords who perhaps aren't acting appropriately. You know, it's a real responsibility being a landlord. You are providing housing for people and it's a very serious business. But of course, like in every industry, you're going to get rogue people or perhaps people who bend the rules a little bit or perhaps don't treat people fairly. Well, local authorities are going to have powers now to really enforce you know, good living conditions and to make sure that the law is executed in the right way when it comes to regaining the possession of the property back. So we need to be prepared for that. And certainly what landlords need to be doing and agents alike is looking at properties and seeing what modifications need to be done now to get out ahead of this, to really make sure that the properties are in excellent condition. Now, I was at a networking event just today, actually, chatting with a lady who's got a friend who is a landlord of 8 properties. And this is what great landlordship looks like. So this particular landlord looks after their tenants. If perhaps somebody moves on from maybe a 2-bed property and they know that they've got a family who's on the lookout for a 3-bed, sorry, if they move from a 3-bed and currently a family are in a 2-bed, they will share that with that tenant so that they're keeping that wonderful tenant who's paying on time and who's looking after the property within their portfolio. And that's what great landlordship looks like. And they're also sort of on the ball with when a tenant moves on, really making sure that the home is looked at, you know, what needs to be done, what repair jobs do we need to do, perhaps what painting needs to be done, what flooring needs to be replaced, that kind of thing, because they want to attract really good tenants and retain really good tenants. And that's what this bill is really going to enforce. It's going to enforce great landlord practice. And I think that's just a really nice way to look after people who are, you know, clearly in your investment properties. Okay, so there is also going to be a mandatory landlord portal. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to allow authorities to easily identify all landlords and their properties, making it easier to track down those who aren't meeting legal requirements or are engaging in harmful practices. Now, the register will likely include information on banning orders, convictions for serious offences, and other breaches, effectively creating a rogue landlord database. Now, this register allows tenants to check if their landlord is registered and if their property meets legal requirements before entering into a tenancy agreement. Knowing who their landlord is and that they have been vetted gives tenants greater peace of mind. The register can also help combat scams by fake landlords advertising non-existent properties. Now, more guidance is going to be issued later in 2025 on this, and it's really important that that landlords are checking out with their local authorities where they need to register, and there may well be some fees in order to do that. But again, there's an absolute wealth of experience online with the local authorities of where the properties are located. So again, we do need to get out ahead of this and make sure that we are registering, and certainly, for letting agents who are looking after landlords, making sure that they've done this. That's part of the service that we extend. It's our job as agents to really look after our landlords' interests. And it might be that we've got landlords who perhaps only have a very small portfolio, perhaps they're not massively networking, they've just maybe got one or two buy-to-let properties. We really do need to be having those conversations, particularly if they're managing aspects of it themselves, and maybe you're just doing kind of a rent collection arrangement with them as well. Are they up to date? Are they keeping up with what's happening in the press, and legislation in general in relation to this renters' rights bill? Okay, so rent increases. So landlords going forwards will only be able to increase the rent once per year. Increases must be in line with current market value, meaning that the price that would be achieved if the property was newly advertised to let. Landlords must provide at least 2 months' notice of any rent increase using a Section 13 notice. And tenants can challenge what they believe to be an unfair or above market rent increase through the first tier tribunal. Now, the bill also aims to prohibit the practice of rental bidding, where landlords invite or accept offers above the asking price. Now, these measures are designed to provide greater security and financial stability for tenants, while also ensure that landlords can still increase the rents to reflect market conditions. So again, as letting agents, we need to support our landlords to making sure that when they are doing these important rent increases, which now can only happen annually, that they are being done in the correct way and that it reflects market value. So again, as letting agents, we really can show our value by assisting our landlords with this, because the last thing we want is any tenants kind of flagging this as being unfair and escalating that to the first tier tribunal for review. Okay, so tenants and pets. So the bill is aiming to make it easier for tenants to have pets, and it does require landlords to reasonably consider requests to keep pets, and not unreasonably refuse them. Now, while landlords can obviously ban pets if there's a valid reason, so in the event of perhaps a HMO or a shared living accommodation like that, if there's going to be a risk of allergies, then you can do it. Or maybe if there's restrictions in relation to the property, again, but it can't be unreasonable. We've got to think about this logically. These tenants are moving in and it needs to feel like their home, and they have got beloved pets. Any pet owner knows that pets are part of the family. It's a non-negotiable, and there is nothing worse than feeling like you might be discriminated against because of that. Now, as I said earlier, I've been a tenant along with a landlord, and way back in 2002, I had all kinds of stipulations. There was no pets allowed, no children, and I can remember getting pregnant maybe 2 years into that tenancy, which did become a rolling tenancy, and being really quite frightened actually, because I fell pregnant and thinking, goodness me, am I going to be moved on? Now, luckily, the agents, I had a great relationship with them and with the landlords as well, and they were fabulous about it. Clearly, they saw my value as a tenant. I always paid on time, the property was kept in really great condition. But in theory, they could have evicted me for that because I'd signed an agreement saying no children or pets. So this is going to be, again, another real positive move. I think the thing is here, we want to retain our tenants. As landlords, it's an absolute headache when we have to start going through the process of finding new tenants, because we don't know who we're entering into an agreement with. It's almost better the devil you know than the devil you don't. And if tenants can keep their pets, and they're going to, there's no problem with that whatsoever. Lots of people have pets and still have beautiful homes. It means that we are going to retain our tenants. So I think, again, this is a real positive move. So how should agents prepare? Well, letting agents should proactively educate landlords, update tenancy agreements and business terms, and enhance their service offerings to support landlords through these changes. Agents also need to ensure they are compliant with new regulations regarding repairs, safety standards, and tenant rights, including the ability to keep pets. Proactive measures include reviewing existing processes, training staff, and potentially adjusting fee structures. Now, as a bit of an exercise yesterday, I went on a mystery shop, and what I did was I invited two local lettings agents to one of my vacant properties where I posed as the landlord. One was a small independent lettings agency, and the other was quite a big player. And what really shocked me about the whole thing was that neither of these agents mentioned to me or asked me what my short term plan was with this property. They were very helpful in terms of sharing fees and talking about all of the insurances they can put in place and all the usual kinds of things, and assuring me that they have got quality tenants looking for properties in the area. But not one asked me, what is your short term plan? Now, I certainly would be doing that because it might well be that that's my place of residence and I just want to go off traveling for a little bit and then want to come back. So, really, my expectation would need managing there, that I'm going to be off, and to expect a longer tenancy. I can't just come back. I can't supply an AST where I can rely on Section 21 for a no fault eviction. It's going to have to be Section 8 where we need to give a reason, a legal reason. And I just found that a little bit disappointing and, quite frankly, a little bit astounding, really, because, as lettings agents, we are placing ourselves as the experts. Landlords don't always understand legislation. I think sometimes there is an assumption that everyone does understand it like we do, but they don't. And therefore, we have a moral and a legal obligation to manage that. And that really shocked me that two agents just didn't think to ask me what my short term plan was for that property. So we really do need to make sure that we are delivering that value service and that we are training staff as well. Now, I don't know if these were owners of the agencies. They didn't actually share with me, and I didn't want to kind of rouse any suspicions by asking them, but it could have been that it was a training need, really, and that both of the individuals, who were fabulous, lovely people, but they need training up now to be getting out ahead of this, because let's make no bones about it, these changes are coming. What do landlords need to do to prepare? Need to read up on the new legal duties. But it's going to be amazing how many landlords who perhaps haven't got big portfolios, perhaps not part of the whole networking world. Some people don't even watch the news, in all honesty, and may have a rental property and they might not be aware of it. So we need to try and get this message out to as many landlords as possible. They need to be looking at the tenancy agreements, ensuring that their properties do meet the decent home standards, and familiarising themselves with the new grounds for eviction. They also need to prepare the move for a new single system of periodic tenancies and be ready to join the government approved ombudsman for dispute resolution. And also be looking at the properties and thinking, what do I need to do? What cash flow have I got to make sure that my properties in my portfolio are in the best possible condition that they can be? There's loads of resources online here. If you visit .gov or if you type in Renters' Right Bill, you can absolutely look up everything to do with this and you'll get the most up to date, because, as I say, this is in the report stage at Parliament at the minute. You can also check out NALA, local landlord groups, and just check for regular updates from other professional bodies as well. So, in summary, Section 21 is going to be abolished. No more ASTs. Every tenancy will become a rolling tenancy agreement. So that means that they'll all become periodic. All homes are going to have to meet the decent home standard in line with social housing. So we need to make sure that we're up to date on that and what that implies for us. All landlords need to make sure that they are registered on the new landlord portal. And as I say, more information on that is going to come out in late 2025. Rent increases are limited to once per annum. It needs to be in line with market value. So we really do need to be careful about that because, as I said earlier in the presentation, tenants can escalate that to the first tier tribunal if they feel an unfair increase has been implemented. And there's also going to be pet friendly reforms, which is just fantastic. So, what are my final thoughts? While primarily focused on tenant rights, it does offer loads of benefits for landlords. It's a more streamlined process for evicting tenants under specific defined circumstances. And it's going to offer a more transparent and predictable rental market. And it's going to drive property standards. I think this is key here. So properties are going to be better maintained, and that's going to potentially attract, lots more quality tenants as well, and enable us to retain those tenants. So let's really embrace this change. Let's be proactive in our approach and just really look after our tenants. And, if you are a landlord, do work with your letting agent to make sure that you're compliant and make sure you're reading up on it. And please, if you're a letting agent, massive responsibility here to demonstrate your value to this amazing industry that we are all part of, to make sure that landlords are protected and tenants are protected. We really do have a duty of care here to make sure that we're doing our job to be really positive about this and make sure that everybody understands their obligations. Thank you so much again for joining me, and we look forward to seeing when this is rolled out. And I'll definitely bring more news on that as we get more guidance on that.